This is Walnut. Walnut has recently become a friend. I started getting into woodworking more. And here are some real friends that I have. They're getting married. And I looked at the registry. They wanted a serving tray. I said, I can make that. So I drew up some plans, texted the groom, asked him for permission. And he shot me a quick text back right before I started cutting. He said to make it 2 inches bigger. So instead of making it any taller, I thought that was fine. I decided to make it 20.5 inches long and 14 inches wide. It was about 2 days before the wedding, and I hadn't gotten them anything yet. And so even if I didn't get a text back from him, I was going to make it anyway. And if he hated it, I was just going to keep it for myself. But luckily, he was all jazzed about it. So after I got done ripping the boards and cross-cutting them, revealing the miters, I took it over to the jointer, and I should have done this before cutting anything. But I took it over to the jointer to give me a good, clean edge. So that way when I glue it up, everything was square, everything was level. Just making sure that they're the same width. After that, I turned to the longer pieces, the 20.5 inch pieces, set up my fancy little stop block there, and revealed the miters on that as well. Once all that was done, just kind of put it together a little bit, just get more of an idea of what it was going to look like. So next I took each board and I started measuring out a 1/2 inch, what's called a dado. So essentially it's just a slot, and I measured on my table saw the right, depth, and also the 1/2 inch out too. And once that was done, I just slowly slid each piece through until I got a clean 1/2 inch cut on each piece. I went as slow as I could, and I snuck up as best as I could, slowly moving the fence over and over and over. And this is after the first pass. So it's going to look like that, but a 1/2 inch wider, as seen right here. So when moving the fence, I moved it a little too far a couple times, which left these little slivers of walnut. So I just took my 1/2 inch chisel, started chiseling some out, and then I realized that I could just kind of push them down and peel them back. Then I cleaned them up more with the chisel. After that, I grabbed some MDF that I have and kind of pulled it out just so I could test fit it, make sure that my measurements were all right, and they were. Even right there, it was super sturdy. I had to knock it into place, and I just lightly tapped it and wasn't going anywhere. After that, I turned to cross-cutting that MDF and cutting it to size. I did this by laying out all the outside pieces, so the 2 long pieces and the 2 wide pieces, on my little work space area. And so I kind of set the MDF kind of down, and I kind of just marked halfway in where the dado was. And so you see me cutting out those pieces too, and cutting it to final size. I know I'm not explaining that entirely well, but I'm sure if you went around to making this piece, you'd figure it out yourself. I'm brand spanking new at woodworking, so I'm not really good at explaining everything. Here's my dry assembly, making sure all the dimensions are correct and make sure it all fits together. Once that was done, I turned to cutting the holes out of the end pieces where the handles are going to be. So this is a Forstner bit that I'm going to use on my drill press, and it gives super clean cuts. This is one of the most satisfying parts of the build. Forstner bits leave really nice I guess, it's not really sawdust, but really like chips, I guess. So I cut 5 holes into them and scribed some straight lines in there so I could use my scroll saw to clean them up, which is also really fun. So instead of using stain for the MDF, I went ahead and just used this Watco Danish oil. I didn't have any walnut stain specifically, and so I just went with the Danish oil. It's probably not the best thing to use, but I later sealed it up with some wipe-on poly. There's also a can of Varathane. It was like light walnut and poly at the same time. I went ahead and used that for the underside of the MDF. It didn't look too great, and I later sanded it down, but it's all right, I guess. So here is the final dry assembly and glue up too. So this is the most stressful part of the build for me because as much as I've calculated, measured, and dry fit, this is when I'm putting glue on it and there's no turning back from here. So luckily it all came together. This ratchet clamp is super nice. It pretty much squares everything up super well. So if your cuts are square, if your 45s are good, then this ratchet clamp will be your best friend. So I let that dry for 8 hours that day. And this is me coming back that night, doing some sanding on the top and then letting her loose. And it was super sturdy. It was awesome. And I was super excited about the build. Went in and did some more sanding and started putting on some wipe-on poly. I'll just shut up during this part so you can watch the beautiful grain pop. So I let that dry overnight. The next morning I took the wipe-on poly again and decided to give it a second coat. And this was the morning of the wedding, so I had to get this done. The wedding was absolutely beautiful, and so glad we were invited, so glad we got to share in that experience.
Come here, you want to help me wipe this on?
And to my friends, if you're watching this video, I pray that you guys have a beautiful marriage, and I hope you have a lot of good community around this serving tray. I hope you have a lot of good people over, and you have a lot of good times, a lot of laughs, a lot of prayer, and I hope you guys like it. I had a lot of fun making this. Just stuck a card in there, put it where the gifts go, and everybody started putting their cards in it too, so I guess it can hold something. Thanks for watching, guys.